This is Chelsea Perkins, better known as Selena Savage. She served in the United States Coast Guard, became a mother, and later modeled for adult content. Walking this path led her to create a mask, one she wore whenever she was in front of a camera. She built a loyal audience that never realized the woman was developing a plan fueled by obsession, revenge, and blood. At 31 years old, Matthew Dunmire was living in Ohio in the United States. He was passionate about music and knew how to play several instruments. His favorite was the guitar. Matthew was originally from Virginia and made many friends throughout his life. He was described as altruistic, loyal, and always willing to lend a helping hand. The son of Tom Lynn, Matthew was born on November 26, 1989. He grew up in a happy household, deeply immersed in music. He spent hours listening to Frank Zappa with his father, the man who first introduced him to the guitar. Smiling and a bit clumsy, Matthew formed strong bonds with a group of friends during his teenage years. United by music, they grew into adulthood together. Matthew entered a long-term relationship. He had 2 children and settled in a small town near Hudson, Ohio. He was always surrounded by friends and kept frequent contact with his family, especially his mother. When Matthew stopped replying to messages, everyone immediately knew something was wrong. His absence was noticed on the morning of March 6, 2021. But the story of his disappearance begins the day before. The Tiki Underground is a local bar. Matthew was often seen there, usually with friends. It was at one of the tables that he mentioned his weekend plans. A friend was coming from Virginia to Ohio, and they had arranged to meet. Instead of choosing a restaurant or cafe, they decided to meet at an Airbnb. The rented house was about 64 kilometers from Hudson. The plan was to spend the night together and say goodbye in the morning. At 6 p.m. on March 5th, while sharing drinks with friends at the bar, Matthew received a message. His eyes locked onto the glowing screen, and he smiled. He revealed that he had met this friend online and that she was already in Ohio. Matthew said goodbye, stood up, and walked out of the bar. At that moment, he was also accompanied by a few co-workers, including his supervisor. The supervisor followed Matthew outside and exchanged a few final words in the parking lot. He noticed a white smart car parked nearby, engine running, headlights on. That was Matthew's ride. According to the supervisor, a brown-haired woman was behind the wheel. Matthew appeared happy and excited. He smiled, walked over to the car, and opened the door. The vehicle left the bar and headed north on Akron-Cleveland Road. That was the last time Matthew was seen alive. He remained communicative through messages during the night and early morning hours, but by the morning of March 6th, the replies stopped. The lack of contact worried everyone, especially his girlfriend, with whom he had 2 children. Despite agreeing to spend the night with another woman, Matthew was still in a relationship. It was his girlfriend who received his final message at 10:29 a.m. In it, he said he was on his way home. That never happened. For investigators and the legal process, however, that message was crucial. Regardless of the betrayal, it made clear that Matthew intended to return home. As the hours passed, the girlfriend's anger turned into concern. She contacted Matthew's friends. No one could reach him. Messages and missed calls piled up on a phone that was rarely turned off. Matthew was the kind of person who always replied quickly and was constantly active on social media. His silence was alarming. He was deeply devoted to his children and would never abandon them. Running away was not an option. Friends and co-workers from the bar didn't know what had happened, but whatever it was, it involved the mysterious woman, the last person to have physical contact with Matthew. The next step in the investigation was identifying her. That mysterious woman was Chelsea Perkins, and they hadn't met online. they had known each other since high school. Matthew and Chelsea attended the same high school in Virginia. The depth of their connection at the time is unclear, but it is known that they interacted. Chelsea graduated in 2009 and enlisted in the U.S. Coast Guard. At 19, she was assigned to a base in Houston, Texas. She started as a small vessel assistant and was later promoted. Her military career, however, was short. She served for 3 years and requested discharge in March 2012. During that time, she met a man who also worked in the Coast Guard. They flirted, began dating, and married a few years after Chelsea left the service. They settled in Virginia and had 2 children together. That's when Chelsea discovered OnlyFans, a platform where adult content creators sell intimate photos and videos independently. She adopted the name Selena Savage and began her new career. By 2021, Chelsea was married, had 2 children, and was fully immersed in the adult entertainment industry. Former military colleagues described her as strange. One even used the word insane. Friends and classmates from childhood recalled odd and occasionally aggressive behavior. Still, until 2021, Chelsea had no criminal record. She had never been arrested or charged with any crime. Her connection with Matthew, whatever its intensity, seemed to have ended in high school, and contact stopped when he moved to Ohio. They did not speak again until 2017. That year would become critical. In 2017, Chelsea went to the police with a serious accusation. She claimed that Matthew had raped her. The details of the alleged assault were never made public. After investigation, police concluded there was insufficient evidence to pursue charges. It was her word against his. Matthew was interrogated and vehemently denied the accusation. Friends said he was deeply shaken, his hands trembled, and shock never left his face. They described him as gentle and peaceful, someone who would never hurt anyone. At the station, Matthew admitted they had engaged in a sexual act, but insisted it was consensual. There were no signs of physical assault or restraint. With no evidence or witnesses, the case was closed. That accusation ended all contact between them in 2017. Whether the allegation was true or not, we may never know. What makes the case even stranger is that in 2021, Chelsea added Matthew on Facebook again, and he accepted. They went back to talking and exchanged several messages. Chelsea claimed she would be traveling to Cleveland in the coming days. She mentioned she had an appointment for a tattoo in Detroit and said it would be a good opportunity to see Matthew again during the trip. He accepted and got into Chelsea's car after drinking at the bar that day. After that, he disappeared. At the time, Matthew did not tell his colleagues the name of this friend, and it was only logical that he had not revealed the meeting to his girlfriend. No one knew the woman's name. The only clue the police received was that it involved a woman with brown hair and a white smart car. The day after the meeting, Matthew Dunmeyer was officially missing and the search began. It dragged on for the next 3 days. At approximately 11 a.m. on March 9, 2021, a police team was dispatched to Terra Vista, a location within Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Some people were hiking when they found something disturbing. Walking into the brush near an old cemetery, they found the body of a man already in a state of decomposition. The victim was dressed entirely in black, wearing fingerless gloves, a leather jacket, a hood, jeans, and boots. A half-empty water bottle was found next to the body. Forensics found documents in the victim's pockets and were able to identify him as Matthew Dunmeyer. He had a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. The entry angle of the projectile ruled out suicide or self-defense. It was an execution. The case shifted from a missing persons investigation to a homicide. Friends and family received the news and were all deeply shaken. But the worst reaction was that of his mother, Tomalin. She was deeply devoted to her son, and losing him that way changed her forever. With the body found and the cause of death known, the police needed to identify the suspect, who we now know was Chelsea Perkins. To find the motive, investigators looked back at 2017. The theory was that Chelsea, feeling the justice system had failed her, spent the following years planning her revenge. To many, this was more plausible than her luring a man to his death for no reason. The FBI built their theory around this motive, but they needed to prove it. As it turned out, it was relatively easy. At 5:46 p.m. on March 5th, security cameras at the Ohio Turnpike Toll Plaza captured a white smart car heading toward Akron, the direction of the bar. Bar cameras confirmed the interaction and captured the vehicle's license plate. It belonged to Chelsea's husband. 15 minutes after leaving the bar, the car appeared on gas station footage. Matthew was seen getting out to buy a pack of cigarettes, a soda, and a bottle of water, the same brand found next to his body. GPS and traffic cameras traced their path north to the Airbnb on Ashbury Avenue in Cleveland. The reservation and the credit card used were both in Chelsea Perkins' name. Later that day, they were seen entering a Potbelly sandwich shop, where they stayed for less than an hour before returning to the Airbnb. At 9:03 a.m. the next morning, Matthew sent his girlfriend a final message suggesting she might have found out about the meeting. He then searched Google Maps for directions to Terra Vista in the park. GPS data showed Matthew's phone arrived at the park at 9:45 a.m., followed by Chelsea's phone connecting to the same tower at 9:59 a.m. Forensics later found Chelsea's DNA on Matthew's body, suggesting they may have had a sexual encounter in the woods, though this was never confirmed. At 10:29 a.m., Matthew's girlfriend received the final text stating he was coming home. A couple in the park reported hearing a gunshot at that exact time. Frightened, they ran toward the parking lot and saw a white smart car. Another couple arrived minutes later and saw Chelsea alone near the cemetery where the body was found. This meant that 4 people were able to place Chelsea at the crime scene at the same time Matthew was executed. The projectile that entered the man's skull remained lodged and was recovered by the medical examiner. It was 9mm ammunition. Chelsea had a 9mm firearm registered in her name. After executing Matthew with a single shot, she carried on with her life as if nothing had happened. Chelsea continued her trip and got the tattoo just as she said she would. She hit the road around 1 p.m. and entered the turnpike via North Reedville, heading west toward Toledo. From there, she crossed into Michigan and arrived at Family Inc., where she got the tattoo. That same day, while Matthew's body lay in the grass, she posted a photo on her Instagram profile to celebrate her new ink. That profile is no longer available on the platform. The following day, she and her vehicle were captured by countless cameras as they made their way back home. It was as if nothing had happened. By March 30th, 2021, agents had compiled all the information into a report. A patrol car arrived at the criminal's house and an agent knocked on the door. Chelsea Perkins was handcuffed and arrested. She offered no resistance and was taken to the patrol car. A search of the residence provided forensics with a 9mm Springfield pistol. It was inside a backpack right next to the woman's ID. Ballistics testing returned a positive match between Chelsea's weapon and the ammunition lodged in Matthew's head. 3 days before the homicide, at 6 p.m., she had shared a post on her Facebook page. It happened on the exact same day Matthew accepted her new friend request. The post read, "Dead men tell no tales." This indicated that Matthew's murder may have been premeditated. But this is where the story takes a turn for the worse. Chelsea left the police station just hours after her arrest. Her lawyer walked in, and she walked out. Despite all the witnesses, DNA, cameras, and GPS history, for some reason she was not held in custody. History repeated itself, and a second criminal went free. This time, it was Tomalin, Matthew's mother, who was left in tears. Tomalin was consumed by a sense of injustice. She couldn't sleep knowing the person responsible for her son's death was free. Following Chelsea's own logic, she decided to take justice into her own hands. Tomalin began her own investigation to understand what had truly happened while she weighed the decision of whether or not to kill Chelsea. Because she didn't believe the accusations Chelsea had made back in 2017, she was convinced the motivation was something else. Without the resources of the state, without tools or training, and clearly emotionally invested in the case, Tomalin couldn't sustain the investigation. Her mental health suffered severe damage and she became dysfunctional. For a brief period, she even convinced herself that the person responsible for the murder wasn't Chelsea, but another of her son's ex-girlfriends. Tomalin was consumed by endless theories that kept her from sleeping. The deeper she dove into the case, the more isolated she became. Tomalin lost friends who gave up trying to communicate with her, and family members grew worried about her obsession. Her life revolved entirely around solving her son's murder, until she devised a terrible plan. Along with her husband, Matthew's father, she obtained fake uniforms for UPS, a well-known delivery company in the United States. She prepared the family vehicle, filled it with empty boxes, and they drove to Washington, D.C., where they believed the person responsible for Matthew's death lived. The car pulled up in front of a specific residence, and the woman stepped out. The man remained behind the wheel with the engine running. With a pistol hidden in her fake jacket, the woman pressed the doorbell. Her fingers were trembling, and she nearly dropped the weapon, but she had already made her choice. The woman responsible for her son's death would pay in blood. As soon as the door opened, Tommy fired 2 shots into the woman's stomach. The problem was, this wasn't Chelsea Perkins. The woman who was shot was an innocent person who had never had any connection to Matthew. By the time Tommy realized that despite the physical similarities, it wasn't Chelsea, it was too late. Her private investigation was a failure, and she had shot an innocent bystander. Desperate, Tommy got back into the car and fled. She realized that not only had she failed to avenge her son, but she had also destroyed her own life and that of another innocent person. Witnesses saw the attack and called the police. Patrol cars intercepted the couple's vehicle and ordered them to surrender. Overwhelmed by despair, guilt, and hopelessness, Tommy didn't know what else to do. She took the pistol, pressed it against her head, and took her own life. The 30-year-old innocent woman who was shot by mistake was rescued and rushed to the hospital. She underwent surgery and managed to survive. John McQuillan, Tommy's husband, surrendered next to his deceased wife in the car. He offered no resistance and was arrested. John was charged as an accomplice to attempted murder and received a sentence of 3 years and 6 months in prison. He was released in March 2025. The police never claimed the case was closed. Acting without the emotional clouding of the family and following the protocol of the legal system, agents knew they needed to connect a few final dots before bringing the hammer down. Unfortunately, Tommy couldn't wait. On December 9, 2021, police knocked on Chelsea's door once again, this time with a very solid case. She was interrogated by 2 agents who presented the evidence: video, ballistics, GPS, DNA, and witnesses. Unable to explain any of it, Chelsea continued to maintain her innocence. She denied any involvement in Matthew's death. Her friends expressed shock at her arrest. While she openly hated Matthew, no one believed she was capable of murder. To the police, the premeditation was evident. She had rented an Airbnb, driven nearly 500 kilometers to meet someone she openly loathed, and scheduled a tattoo just hours after the crime. The judge denied bail, and Chelsea remained in custody until her trial. To resolve the case more quickly, as she was still pleading not guilty, the state offered a plea deal. The sentence would be 27 to 31 years if she admitted to the murder. She refused the offer and maintained her innocence for the next few years. However, Chelsea's chances of winning at trial were slim. Likely convinced by her defense team, she eventually withdrew her plea of innocence. On May 27, 2025, Chelsea pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. She confessed to killing Matthew but denied premeditation. Her motivation, she claimed, was revenge for past abuse. The reason why she had intimate relations with him before firing the shot, however, remains unknown. Chelsea Perkins was found guilty and sentenced to 22 years and 5 months in federal prison. Today, at 35 years old, Chelsea Perkins is being held in a temporary facility before being assigned to a permanent federal prison to serve her sentence. With good behavior, she may be eligible for release sometime between 2044 and 2045.